Good evening, dear viewers. This is George from Ireland. Well, Theresa May has tendered her resignation to Her Majesty the Queen. So, ding dong, the witch is dead. Ding dong, the wicked old witch is dead. Well, anyway, May has announced that she's going to step down, certainly by the 7th of July, hopefully in June. There was already a headline last week, May till June. It just depends how long it takes to select her replacement. Why? Why is Theresa May doing this? Well, in a word, Brexit, because she became Prime Minister due to the Brexit referendum almost 3 years ago. And she did that for a while. She issued that intention to withdraw from the European Union, Article 51, on the 29th of March 2017, giving the United Kingdom 2 years to negotiate an exit agreement or leave by default. She then triggered that election, which didn't go so well. Conservatives got the most votes and the most seats, and the Conservatives were just short of a majority, had to have this confidence and supply agreement with the Democratic Unionist Party, which was both a blessing and a curse. So I won't go into the whole rigmarole, but there were these torturous negotiations with the European Union, which made very slow headway, partly her fault, partly the EU's fault, some goodwill on both sides, some ineptitude, is both cock-up and conspiracy. But she painted herself into a corner, and things were harder to deliver because she didn't have a majority, and she'd sold the same camel twice. She had assured the Democratic Unionist Party that Northern Ireland would be treated the same as the rest of the United Kingdom, but then she wanted some trade agreement with the European Union, which would have required regulatory alignment for Northern Ireland, if not the entire United Kingdom. So this was a conundrum. How do you square that circle? You can't. So she's going to have to renege on her pledge to them, or break her electoral pledge, saying Brexit means Brexit, which implies a hard Brexit, except she doesn't want that. Remember, she's a Remainer, and she was simply implementing Brexit because that was the wish of the people. She was asked this in an interview thrice, do you believe in Brexit? And she always sidestepped the question and would say, I will carry out the will of the people. She's going to implement this because the majority voted for it. So the implication of that was unmissable. She did not think that Brexit was a good idea. Surprise, surprise. So she's been brought low. 3 times the House of Commons voted against the Brexit agreement that she'd negotiated with the European Union. And the EU said, well, that's final. We're not going back to the drawing board. We are sick of it. Don't blame them. I'm bored rigid with it too. Even a political anorak like me is fed up to the back teeth of Brexit. Sometimes it's an EU strategy to just wear the people down. By sheer exhaustion, they'll agree to something. EU negotiations often go down to the wire, often over the deadline. So brinksmanship can work for them, as they reckon that the UK is more desperate than they are, and the United Kingdom must have a breaking point. But anyway, so that didn't happen. There was a ray of hope. The agreement being rejected by 250 votes the first time, a record defeat for a government, but she got it down to being defeated by only 58 votes. If she got 30 people to change their minds, it would have passed. And she was thinking maybe next time she could do that. Or at least enough to abstain, it would pass. But again, that didn't happen. Well, she didn't go that far. She was going to have a 4th crack at it. But then there was a cabinet revolt, and Andrea Leadsom resigned the other day. Remember, in 2016, the Conservative MPs whittled it down to 2 candidates to put to the rank-and-file Conservatives to vote on for the leadership, and Andrea Leadsom, she pulled out the race at the last minute. Therefore, Theresa May won unopposed. So she's been brought down. She had so many resignations, 35 ministerial resignations in under 3 years. By contrast, Margaret Thatcher had only 25 resignations in 11.5 years. So the comparisons are often drawn between them simply because they're women, but they're actually 2 very different people. So Theresa May suffered from a lack of authority, even though she then had an election which supposedly gave her a mandate, but she was short on the charisma stakes. On achievements, well, we just don't really look at this as overshadowed by Brexit. Yes, there was economic growth through the whole time. Unemployment was quite low. Things were reasonably going reasonably well in the NHS and education. Crime was up significantly, so that was probably major failing on her watch. But almost everything else has been pushed off the agenda because of this. There were some large terrorist attacks there. She brought soldiers onto the streets, supposedly showing a tough response. They were withdrawn for about a month. Makes me wonder, were they put out there for PR reasons? If you really need them, you keep them there. You wouldn't suddenly withdraw them. Was just an electoral gimmick? Some people consider it to be a stunt. So they hand over. Well, the next obvious question is, who comes next? Now, Boris Johnson's been biding his time. He resigned almost a year ago, and obviously he's always had his eye on the top job. His sister, Rachel Johnson, is a journalist. And like a good journalist and a bad sister, she vouchsafed that as a toddler, he wanted to be world king. He's a man of boundless ambition and enormous self-assurance. He's exuberant. He's a rumbustious character. He's a lovable rogue. He's a slimy shit. You wouldn't trust him as far as you could punch him. And he's broken every promise he ever made. He's a real backstabber. He's always trying to get up the greasy pole. So deep down, he believes in only one thing: Boris Johnson. That's Bojo. So in a poll of Conservative ordinary members, he comes out top by a long way, more than twice as popular as the next most popular person. They'd vote for him. But remember, first of all, people have to get nominated by a number of members of parliament. Now, Bojo has enough members of parliament behind him. Apart from Boris Johnson, who's going to put their hat in the ring? Michael Gove, Dominic Raab, Sajid Javid, possibly others. Andrea Leadsom again. We've got the runners. The riders are people like Andrea Leadsom, Tugendhat, Hutt, and I can't even think who else. Penny Mordaunt. But let's just look at the four serious candidates. Philip Hammond, I'm not even sure about him. Amber Rudd, her seat she scarcely holds, and she's not considered to be a major candidate. These four. Then there is Dominic Raab. The second most popular person is a fairly bland, unknown cabinet minister, and he was a city solicitor. He comes from Buckinghamshire. He's got some Czech Jewish background, fairly typical suburban conservative. No skeletons in his closet. He'd be all right. Michael Gove, a filthy tove, seems religionist. He notoriously poignarded Boris Johnson last time, having been on his side. I think that count against him. I think he's regarded as religionist. I don't think Michael Gove is going to get it. He certainly doesn't have the common touch. Former Times journalist. Like Boris Johnson, he was also president of the Oxford Union, which is the debating society of Oxford University. Bojo, I know he went to Eton, Oxford, but he got a scholarship to Eton. His dad was a journalist, a Conservative MEP. He's not top draw. He's not blue blood and broad acres. He is 1/8 Turkish, as he'd like to tell you, and all the rest of it. He was married when he was 22. He got divorced pretty quick. He's a notorious womanizer. He never once committed fidelity. He married Marina Wheeler, this half-Indian left-wing barrister. Her sister is a spokeswoman for the European Union. Bojo knew them both when he was in the British School in Brussels in the late 70s. What else about Bojo? And then he was having affairs all over the place, including with Anne McElvoy, the well-known journalist that she was married at the time. This is way back in about 2002. What else about Boris Johnson? And they had a child with some other woman he met several years ago whilst married to Marina Wheeler. He famously had a extramarital liaison with, goodness, I can't even remember her name now, that quite well-known journalist, Petronella Wyatt, impregnated her and she had an abortion, and her mother told the whole story to the newspaper in 2004, and on and on. So that's him. He's a media personality. He's a clown. But will he make a decent prime minister? I think he'd be an absolute scream, but maybe not for serious prime ministerial material. And then there's Sajid Javid, who's a safe pair of hands, who's got a good backstory, coming from a Pakistani working-class background. He pulled himself up by his bootstraps after exiting university, joined Deutsche Bank, a self-made millionaire. He's married to a white Christian woman. He's a nominal Muslim. He's really like a poster boy for integration. Strongest proof there could be that the UK is not a racist country, not an Islamophobic country. Bojo, well, his enemies are legion, certainly in the Tory party. There's obviously envy of his media profile. There's a recognition that he's a glory boy. He's in this for himself. He's a total opportunist. At the last possible minute, he came on side the Leave campaign, probably thinking that gave him a better shot at being Prime Minister. And of course, he bottled it when Michael Gove withdrew support in 2016. He built up a head of steam. He should have gone for it, but his nerve failed him. So Bojo will go for it, obviously. This is his chance. He's always dreamt of getting the keys to number 10 Downing Street. He wants to be First Lord of the Treasury. Gove is going to go for it. But anyway, as I said, first of all goes to the Conservative members of Parliament. Supposing there are 4 candidates, they'll vote. The lowest rank will be eliminated. There'll be 3 candidates. They'll vote again. The lowest one will be eliminated. There are 2 candidates left. They go forward to the rank and file members of the Conservative Party, could be me, and they vote on who their favourite is. What is the purpose of the MPs whittling it down to 2? I'll tell you why. They know these people on a personal level. They see them face to face every day. And the other thing is, supposing the ordinary members really like Boris Johnson and the parliamentary party couldn't work with that person, then that would be catastrophic. But anyway, so I think Bojo won't make it, not to the final 2 anyway. So who's more likely to make it? Actually, I think Raab and Javid. Gove does have some chance. Of the 2, I slightly think Javid is a bit more likely to get it. Raab has got a few enemies. He's not really fouled up in his job. Javid, it just would look better for the party to have an ethnic minority person in charge. Fascinatingly, the women who are talked about, Penny Mordaunt, Amber Rudd, Andrea Leadsom, are all considered to be way down the meadow, having minimal support amongst the ordinary members of the party. Not so much amongst the MPs. They're not low. Andrea Leadsom is a bit out of her depth, seems to be a bit of a lightweight, and fouled her nest last time with a stupid interview when she said that Theresa May didn't care about the future so much because she didn't have children and I do. And that was thought to be a really bitchy thing to say. And then Andrea Leadsom said that she was outraged that a journalist had quoted her correctly. And it was all recorded as well, so she couldn't deny what she'd said. So there we are. I don't think that Bojo will wear the crown. It would be hilarious if he did. He has got some chance. If it came to obviously the ordinary members, he would win by a country mile. But I don't think he's going to get that far. As I say, my hunch is it'll be Sajid Javid number 1. He'll be Prime Minister. I've been saying this for a couple of years now. Dominic Raab number 2. Gove will be number 3 in the ballot. Obviously, he won't get to be voted on by the ordinary members.